Still single? I told you, no successful man would ever choose you.
She tightened her grip on the gift bag and froze. Laughter exploded across the ballroom before she even looked up. There she is. Derek Lawson's voice rang through the room. Everyone, my ex-wife finally decided to show up. Dozens of conversations stopped. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Champagne glasses hovered in midair. Evelyn Harper felt every pair of eyes land on her. She had almost stayed home. After spending nearly an hour debating whether to attend her cousin Emma's engagement party, she'd convinced herself that family mattered more than old memories. She had chosen a simple emerald green dress, styled her hair neatly, wrapped Emma's gift herself, and promised she would quietly congratulate the happy couple before leaving early. Instead, the first person she saw was the man who had spent years convincing her she would never be enough. Derek stood near the center of the ballroom with one arm wrapped around a beautiful woman in a shimmering silver dress. Claire Bennett, his girlfriend. The woman he'd started dating only months after their divorce. Derek raised his champagne glass with a grin that hadn't changed in years. "Come on, Evelyn," he called. "Don't stand all the way over there. We were married once. We're practically family." A few guests chuckled nervously. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances. Emma, the bride-to-be, looked horrified from across the room, but before she could reach her cousin, Derek continued. "I was just telling Claire about you." Claire smiled politely. "Were you?" "Oh, absolutely." Derek nodded dramatically. "I told her Evelyn always loved these fancy events." He looked Evelyn up and down before adding with a smirk, "Even if she never quite dressed for them." More laughter. Small. Uncomfortable. But loud enough. Evelyn looked down briefly at her dress. She had saved for months to buy it. Suddenly it felt cheap. Too plain. Too ordinary. She forced herself to breathe. Not tonight. She had promised herself she wouldn't let him ruin another important day. She walked forward calmly and handed Emma the beautifully wrapped gift. "Congratulations." Emma hugged her tightly. "I'm so happy you're here." "So am I." Emma whispered. "I'm sorry." Evelyn smiled softly. "You don't have anything to apologize for." Unfortunately, Derek wasn't finished. He walked toward them carrying his drink. Claire followed behind, though she looked far less comfortable now. "So," Derek said loudly, "still single?" Evelyn met his eyes. "Yes." "No dates?" "No." "No boyfriend?" "No." He laughed. "I guess starting over wasn't as easy as you thought." Silence. Even the live band seemed to stop playing. Derek took another sip. "You know," he shrugged dramatically, "when you walked out of our marriage, you acted like your life would magically become better." He looked around the room. Turns out nobody else wanted damaged goods either. Someone gasped. Emma stepped forward. "Derek, enough." He ignored her. "You know what your biggest problem was, Evelyn?" She said nothing. "You always thought you deserved better." He laughed. "But look at you." He gestured toward Claire. "I moved on." He gestured toward Evelyn. "You didn't." Claire shifted awkwardly. "Derek." "No, seriously." He continued. "She thought she'd find some perfect prince." He shook his head. "Instead, she got an apartment, a teaching job, and 40 cats waiting in her future." A few people laughed. Others stared at the floor. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her purse. The words hurt. Not because they were true, because they sounded exactly like they had during the final months of their marriage. Every argument, every insult, every attempt to make her feel smaller. She remembered crying herself to sleep while Derek reminded her that no successful man would ever choose a woman who questioned him. She remembered apologizing for things that weren't her fault. She remembered believing him. Not anymore. She lifted her chin. "I'm glad you're happy, Derek." He blinked. "I truly am." Her voice remained calm. "I hope one day you learn that making someone else feel small doesn't make you any bigger." The room became painfully quiet. For a split second, even Derek seemed surprised. Then he laughed again. "Oh, please." He looked toward the guests. "See, this is what she always did. Act morally superior." Claire frowned. "Derek, you know why our marriage failed?" He looked directly at Evelyn. "Because she never appreciated what she had." Evelyn smiled sadly. "No. Our marriage failed because respect disappeared long before love did." The sentence landed harder than shouting ever could. Several older relatives exchanged glances. One elderly aunt slowly nodded. Derek's smile faded. "You really believe that?" "I do. You left a successful husband. I left a man who made me question my worth every single day." His jaw tightened. "Oh, here comes the victim speech." She sighed quietly. "I'm not a victim anymore." She turned toward Emma. I'll let you enjoy your evening. She started walking away. Then a calm voice echoed through the ballroom. I was wondering how long it would take before someone embarrassed himself. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every conversation stopped instantly. Even Derek turned. The ballroom entrance had opened. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped inside, removing a pair of dark sunglasses as though he'd just walked out of a long international flight. His silver tie was slightly loosened. His overnight travel bag rested casually in one hand. There was nothing flashy about him. Yet something about his quiet confidence made the room instinctively move aside. Behind him stood only one assistant carrying a leather portfolio. No security. No dramatic entrance. Just presence. Emma's fiancé whispered, "Is that?" Another guest answered under his breath. Nicholas Ashford. A ripple moved across the ballroom. The Nicholas Ashford? The CEO? He flew in today. I thought he was still in Singapore. Derek's confident smile disappeared. His eyes widened. Nicholas Ashford Global, one of the country's largest companies. The company Derek proudly told everyone he worked for. Nicholas ignored every face in the room. His attention settled only on Evelyn. She stared back in confusion. Nicholas? A warm smile touched his face. I'm sorry I'm late. He walked directly toward her. Not hurried. Not theatrical. Simply certain. When he reached her, he noticed her empty left hand. His expression softened. You forgot something. From the inside pocket of his jacket, he removed a small velvet ring box. The room became so quiet that the distant clinking of dishes from the hotel kitchen could be heard. Nicholas opened the box. Inside rested a simple platinum wedding ring. Not oversized. Not flashy. Elegant. Timeless. He gently took Evelyn's trembling hand. She looked up at him. For just a moment. Neither of them spoke. Then Nicholas smiled. You always forget to wear it when you're nervous. With incredible tenderness, he slid the ring back onto her finger. A collective gasp swept across the ballroom. Derek stared at the ring, then at Evelyn, then back at Nicholas. No. Nicholas lifted Evelyn's hand and kissed her knuckles gently. Only then did he finally look toward Derek. His voice remained calm. I believe introductions are overdue. He slipped one arm comfortably around Evelyn's waist. My name is Nicholas Ashford. A pause. And Evelyn. He looked into her eyes with unmistakable affection. Is my wife. The room exploded into stunned whispers. Emma's hands flew over her mouth. Claire took an involuntary step backward. Derek's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered across the marble floor. What? His voice cracked. What did you just say? Nicholas answered without the slightest hint of arrogance. I said, Evelyn Harper Ashford is my wife. Derek stood frozen, staring first at the wedding ring, then at Nicholas, then back at Evelyn as though his mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. No, he muttered. This has to be some kind of joke. It isn't, Nicholas replied calmly. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't carry anger. Yet somehow everyone in the ballroom heard every word. Derek forced a laugh. You expect me to believe you've been married all this time? Nicholas looked at Evelyn before answering. We've always preferred to keep our private life exactly that. Private. Emma finally found her voice. Evelyn. Her eyes filled with tears. You got married? Evelyn looked at her cousin apologetically. I wanted to tell you. Emma laughed through her tears. And you picked today to surprise everyone? Nicholas smiled. I was hoping for a quieter announcement. A ripple of nervous laughter spread across the room. The tension eased slightly. Only Derek remained stiff. His face had turned pale. Claire slowly looked at him. You told me she couldn't even keep a relationship. Derek swallowed. Claire, you said she was bitter. He opened his mouth. You said she begged you not to leave. Several guests exchanged surprised glances. Claire turned toward Evelyn. Is any of that true? Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She wasn't interested in humiliating anyone. Finally she spoke. Our marriage ended. It hurt both of us. But I never begged anyone to stay. Claire stared at Derek. So you lied. It wasn't like that. Derek, it wasn't. She folded her arms. What else have you lied about? Derek rubbed the back of his neck. Can we not do this here? Nicholas finally spoke. Mr. Lawson. Derek immediately straightened. Sir. Nicholas's expression remained composed. I'd like to clarify something. Yes, sir. My concern isn't that you insulted my wife. The room became silent again. Nicholas continued. My concern is that you appeared perfectly comfortable humiliating a woman in front of dozens of people. His words landed far harder than shouting ever could. You mocked her career. You mocked her marriage. You mocked her dignity. He paused. And you smiled while doing it. Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for another drink. Nicholas looked around the ballroom. If someone is willing to treat another human being that way in public, I often wonder how they behave when no one else is watching. Derek's face burned red. Sir, I wasn't thinking. No. Nicholas answered gently. You were. That's precisely what concerns me. Claire slowly stepped away from Derek. She suddenly remembered something. 2 months earlier, she had accidentally dropped a glass in Derek's apartment. He hadn't shouted. He'd smiled, then spent nearly an hour reminding her how careless she was. Another memory surfaced. A waitress bringing the wrong order. Derek had embarrassed the young woman until she cried. At the time, Claire had laughed nervously. Now, she saw a pattern. Derek. Her voice shook. Have you always been like this? He reached for her hand. Claire, don't listen to. She pulled away. No. She looked directly into his eyes. I've been making excuses for you. She turned toward Evelyn. I'm sorry. I judged you. I believed everything he told me. Evelyn gave her a small, understanding smile. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. Claire's eyes glistened. I thought you were bitter. But you're peaceful. She looked back at Derek. And now I understand why. Without another word, she removed the diamond bracelet Derek had given her for her birthday. She placed it into his hand. I can't build a future with someone who enjoys making other people feel worthless. Derek's voice cracked. Claire. No. She shook her head. If this is how you treated your wife, one day it'll be how you treat me. She picked up her purse. I deserve better. Then she walked away. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just decisively. The ballroom watched in stunned silence. Derek looked as though someone had knocked the air out of his lungs. For the first time that evening, he looked completely alone. Emma quietly wiped away tears. I think. She smiled weakly. We should probably continue celebrating before someone else starts another family crisis. The room erupted into relieved laughter. Music slowly resumed. People returned to their tables. Conversations restarted. But almost every guest glanced toward Nicholas and Evelyn. Some out of curiosity, others out of admiration. Nicholas leaned slightly toward Evelyn. Would you like some fresh air? She nodded. I would. He offered his arm. She slipped hers through it. Together, they walked out of the ballroom. Nobody stopped them. Nobody dared. The cool evening breeze greeted them as they stepped onto the hotel's terrace overlooking the city lights. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then, Evelyn's shoulders began trembling. Nicholas immediately turned toward her. Hey. The single word was soft. Gentle. I'm okay. She wasn't. The tears she'd fought all evening finally escaped. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I thought. She laughed weakly through her tears. I honestly thought I'd left all of this behind. Nicholas stepped closer. You did. She shook her head. When he started talking, it felt like I was back in our house. She wrapped her arms around herself. I could hear every argument, every insult, every time he told me I wasn't enough. Nicholas didn't interrupt. He simply listened. He used to tell me nobody would ever love me the way he did. Her voice cracked. For a while, I believed him. Nicholas reached out slowly, not pulling her into an embrace immediately, giving her the choice. When she stepped toward him, he wrapped his arms around her. She rested her forehead against his chest. I hate that he still has that effect on me. Nicholas gently stroked her hair. No. You hate that he reminded you of someone you've worked very hard to stop being. She looked up. What do you mean? The woman who questioned her own worth. He smiled softly. I haven't seen her in a very long time. Evelyn searched his face. You really think I've changed? I know you have. How? Nicholas chuckled quietly. Do you remember the first day we met? She smiled despite herself. At the literacy fundraiser. You spilled coffee on me. I was mortified. You apologized 6 times. She laughed. It was expensive coffee. No. He smiled. You apologized because you thought existing was inconveniencing people. She became quiet. I noticed something else. What? Every compliment made you uncomfortable. You'd immediately change the subject. If someone thanked you, you said you were just doing your job. If someone praised your work, you insisted anyone could have done it. He gently brushed a tear from her cheek. Do you know what I saw? She shook her head. A remarkable woman, who had spent years being taught not to believe she was remarkable. Fresh tears filled her eyes. Nicholas continued. Derek didn't destroy your confidence in one day. It happened little by little. A comment here, a criticism there, a joke disguised as honesty. Until one day, you couldn't hear your own voice anymore. She whispered, I thought maybe I really wasn't enough. He shook his head immediately. No, you were simply asking the wrong man to tell you your value. She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, the words actually reached her heart. After a long silence, she asked quietly, "Why did you marry me, Nicholas?" He smiled. "Because you never cared who I was." She looked confused. "The first 6 months we knew each other, you had absolutely no idea I was the CEO of Ashford Global. You thought I worked in corporate administration." She laughed. "I did. You argued with me over children's reading programs. You challenged my ideas. You even told me my presentation was boring." She covered her face. "Oh my goodness. I really said that." "You did. And it was." They both laughed. It was the first honest conversation I'd had in weeks. His smile softened. "You never looked at my bank account. You looked at me. And I fell in love with the woman who believed every child deserved a chance, while forgetting she deserved one too." Evelyn wiped away another tear. "I love you." Nicholas kissed her forehead. "I know. And I never want you to doubt how deeply you're loved." Just then, Nicholas's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. Evelyn noticed immediately. "What is it?" He locked the phone. "Nothing for tonight." She narrowed her eyes. "Nicholas." He sighed. "It's work." She smiled knowingly. "You never say it's work unless it's something serious." He chuckled. "I suppose you've learned me too well." "What happened?" He hesitated, then answered honestly. "Tomorrow morning, someone from internal audit, legal, compliance, and human resources wants to brief me on an investigation." She frowned. "Is it important?" Nicholas nodded slowly. "Very. They've been working on it for several months." "What kind of investigation?" He looked toward the lights of the city before answering. "One involving fraudulent vendor contracts, shell companies, and one of our senior finance managers." Evelyn frowned. "Do you know who it is?" Nicholas looked back at her. "Yes." A long pause followed. Then he quietly said, "Derek Lawson." Evelyn's eyes widened. "What?" "I found out 2 months ago. He has no idea. And tomorrow, the investigation will finally be concluded." If you're enjoying the story so far, this is the perfect time to hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Derek's downfall is only beginning, or has karma already done enough? The biggest twist is still ahead. Nicholas slipped his phone back into his pocket and looked at Evelyn. "I don't want a night to be about work." She searched his face. "But it is connected to Derek, isn't it?" He nodded once. "It is." She lowered her eyes. "I don't want anyone thinking you're doing this because of me." Nicholas gently took both of her hands. "Listen to me carefully." She looked up. "What happens tomorrow has absolutely nothing to do with what happened inside that ballroom." His tone was calm but unwavering. "The investigation began months before tonight. It was initiated by internal audit after irregular vendor payments were discovered. Compliance became involved. Then legal. Finally, human resources." He gave her a reassuring smile. "If Derek had treated you with complete respect tonight, tomorrow would still happen exactly the same way." Evelyn let out a slow breath. "Thank you." "For what?" "For making sure justice stays justice." Nicholas kissed her forehead. "It has to. If I ever used my position to settle personal scores, I'd become exactly the kind of leader I never want to be." The next morning, Ashford Global Headquarters buzzed with its usual Monday activity. Employees hurried through the marble lobby carrying coffee and laptops. Nobody noticed Derek Lawson walking through the revolving doors with his usual confidence. After Claire left him the previous evening, he had barely slept. Still, he convinced himself everything would settle down. Nicholas Ashford had been professional. Surely the awkward encounter at the engagement party was behind them. As he stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor, his assistant approached him nervously. "Mr. Lawson, good morning." She avoided his eyes. "The executive review committee is waiting for you." He frowned. "I wasn't told about a meeting. It was added late yesterday." "Who's attending?" She hesitated. "Internal audit, compliance, legal, human resources, and..." She swallowed. "Mr. Ashford." A strange feeling settled in Derek's stomach. He forced a smile. "Probably another quarterly review." He straightened his tie before opening the conference room door. The room was unusually quiet, for thick folders rested on the polished table. Several members of the executive team sat expressionless. Nicholas Ashford stood near the window. He turned as Derek entered. "Good morning, Mr. Lawson." "Good morning, sir." Nicholas gestured toward an empty chair. "Please have a seat." Derek sat. Nicholas remained standing. "Mr. Lawson, I want to make something very clear before we begin. Derek nodded quickly. Yes, sir. What occurred at the engagement party on Saturday evening is not the reason for today's meeting. Derek visibly relaxed. Nicholas continued. My responsibility as chief executive officer requires me to separate personal matters from corporate governance. The issues we are discussing today began long before that event. He looked toward the head of internal audit. Please proceed. The auditor opened the first folder. Over the past 8 months, we identified he realized nobody was coming to defend him. As the elevator doors opened into the lobby, 2 federal investigators stepped forward. Mr. Derek Lawson? He froze. Yes. One investigator displayed official identification. You are under arrest in connection with fraud, conspiracy, and financial misconduct. Employees stopped walking. Whispers spread across the lobby. Derek instinctively looked back toward the executive elevators. Nicholas stood on the balcony above with several executives. Their eyes met briefly. Nicholas gave a small nod. Not victorious, not cruel, simply acknowledging that actions always have consequences. Hours later, Nicholas arrived home. Evelyn met him at the door. She immediately noticed the exhaustion on his face. Is it over? He nodded. It is. She searched his expression. You don't look happy. I'm not. She looked surprised. He broke the law. He did. And justice was necessary. Nicholas loosened his tie. But watching someone's life collapse is never something I celebrate. Evelyn walked over and took his hand. That's one of the reasons I love you. He smiled. You once told me that power reveals character. I remember. You were right. Several months passed. Ashford Global continued growing stronger. The company's anti-fraud reforms became a model for other corporations. Meanwhile, Evelyn returned to teaching. She smiled more, laughed more. The invisible weight she'd carried for years had finally disappeared. One autumn evening, Ashford Global hosted its annual charity gala. This year's proceeds supported organizations helping women rebuild their lives after divorce, domestic abuse, and financial hardship. The ballroom was filled with community leaders, business executives, teachers, volunteers, and families. Nicholas stepped onto the stage. I'd like everyone to meet someone very special. He extended his hand. My wife, Evelyn Ashford. Applause filled the room. Evelyn walked onto the stage with quiet confidence. Months earlier, standing before a crowd would have terrified her. Now, she simply smiled. She adjusted the microphone. There was a time when I believed the worst thing that had ever happened to me was my divorce. She paused. But I eventually realized. My divorce wasn't my ending. It was my beginning. The audience listened in complete silence. I also learned something else. She smiled toward Nicholas. The greatest blessing of marrying this man isn't his success. It isn't his company. It isn't his wealth. It's the way he treats people, especially when no one is watching. Nicholas lowered his head modestly. Evelyn continued. Respect, kindness, patience. They don't cost anything, but they can completely change someone's life. Thunderous applause erupted. As the evening ended, Nicholas walked Evelyn outside. Without saying a word, he opened the passenger door for her. She smiled. You always do that. I always will. Across the street, Derek stood alone after leaving a nearby cafe. He happened to witness the quiet moment. Nicholas wasn't performing for cameras. There were no reporters, no shareholders, no audience. Just a husband treating his wife with gentle respect. For the first time, Derek understood what he had never understood during his marriage. Love was never about control. It was never about winning arguments. It was never about making someone feel small so you could feel important. He quietly looked away, not because he was jealous, but because he finally accepted the truth. He hadn't lost Evelyn because another man was richer. He had lost her the day he stopped respecting her. As Nicholas closed the car door and walked around to the driver's side, Evelyn looked through the window at the city lights. She smiled peacefully, not because she had married a billionaire, but because she had finally learned that her worth had never depended on anyone else's opinion. Sometimes life doesn't send someone better simply to rescue us. Sometimes it sends someone who reminds us of the value we should have seen in ourselves all along. And once a person truly believes they deserve respect, they never settle for anything less again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that healing is possible. And tell us in the comments, what was the most powerful lesson from Evelyn's journey? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, remember, your past may shape your story, but it never has to define your ending.